Good morning, afternoon, good evening, everyone. How you doing? I apologize for the fans, but I got air conditioning coming to this unit because it's going to be the coffee shop. But it'll be a few months yet before it's installed, probably 8 weeks they're saying. So we have fans for a few more episodes at least. Hope everyone's doing well out there. The world's still crazy, obviously. And that seems fairly inescapable at this point. I've been enjoying that keynote box that I showed you last time or the time before. I think I'm 4 or 5 records into it. I'm kind of taking my time doing a record or so a day. Just really processing the groups, the lineups, the era which each one's recorded in. Some LPs are 2 various sets. Other LPs are actually just 1 set. They almost all seem to have alternate takes. But the playing, the Coleman Hawkins, the Lester Young, is the Cozy Cole band. There's just some really crazy good stuff, man. And it's very modern. It's very well recorded. It doesn't sound as dated as some of the other stuff you'll hear from the 40s, and especially earlier stuff than that. Interestingly enough, I'll dive into this box set deeper as I get further into listening to it. But some of the 78 RPMs that they put out in the 40s actually were 12-inch 78s, which I didn't know there was 12-inch 78s, and I didn't know most people's players had a table big enough to fit a 12-inch LP, and I'm guessing they just kind of squeezed them in there, and they probably overspilled the platter they sat on. I don't know. But I know that when they switched from the 10-inch LP to the 12-inch LP, people's players was one of the considerations they were concerned about. And the reason why they went to the 10-inch LP initially was because the 10-inch players would continue to fit everyone's 78 RPM player, which were all 10-inch LPs as well. My allergies are bugging me. Let's excuse me for that. So, listening to some Al Cohn lately. Big Al Cohn guy. I have a lot of his body of work. He appears on a lot of different labels over the years. He somewhat slips under the radar a little bit, but he's a beautiful lyrical player, and he actually borrows a lot from a guy like Ben Webster with that breathiness and that wonderful sense of playing a ballad and singing with that tenor, bringing out that male expression. And the saxophone is very expressionistic and very much reflects the male voice, which is part of why I think it became so popular. It was a very great way to reinterpret lyrics, and people could kind of still get the essence of what the lyrics were about. The saxophone can almost mimic and sing, more so than some of the other horns. A trumpet's got a brighter tone, doesn't really quite echo the human voice the same way. I love Al Cohn. That record on Don, which is a great little label out of the East Coast in the late 50s. Don's output's fantastic. It's only about 24 records. It's great stuff. And that's an outstanding record with a great rhythm section with Hank Jones, Milt Hinton, and O.C. Johnson. Frank Rehack actually on there is also a fantastic revelation. He's a great trombonist. He gets his own half record, I think it is, here at Dawn. If you like Bethlehem, you'll like Dawn. It's similar vein, some cool bop, some post bop, modern, some compositional stuff, a lot of great virtuosity. Again, it's more leaning towards the white side of the jazz canon, because again, the businesses were still very separate entities at that point. Even though the color barrier had been broken, and guys were playing together live at times, it was still much more common to record for various separate labels, to record with pretty racially drawn lines in your groups. And it was just the business side of things. It was who these records were going to be marketed to that often impacted those type of decisions. Some labels had no interest really in challenging social constructs. They were interested in making money, and you can't really fault them for that. You can more just give credit to the labels who were willing to be riskier and take some chances. It's not to say Don doesn't have some black sessions. They absolutely do. Lucky Thompson, which I think is actually a French session. For some reason my phone did an update, and it keeps wanting to turn the screen dark on me, so I have to keep touching it. Hopefully it'll stop this time. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of the Don output, and that record in particular. What a great cover. It's burnt gold black worthy, even though I don't know who did the cover design on this. Cover design, Fran Scott Studio. It says Fran Scott Studio. I don't know who that is. Great stuff. Which leads me into the first things I want to show you today. I'm going to unbox some recent arrivals. This will probably be my last unboxing episode for a while, as we're now focused on coffee shop expenses. And even though those monies are separate to some degree, I'm still going to have a lot of things I got to pay for out of my own pocket, I'm sure, as we approach those deadlines. So I told my wife I'd back off on buying records for a while, and I haven't really been buying a ton anyway. I've been kind of using that face out of Japan to fill in some in between the crack stuff that's hard to find domestically for a decent price or a decent condition. So I got 18 records from Japan this time. A nice little bundle, some cool stuff. And I got a few other pieces here I want to show you real quickly. Speaking of Alcone, I've been collecting labels, as those of you who know the channel are well aware. And the Progressive label was a little label out of the East Coast that I had a few pieces by, but there was a few pieces that were hard to come by. And the label resurfaces in the 70s with a whole new line of records. But in the 50s, there was, I think, 4 10 inches and 2 LPs, and then they ceased to operate. And the first one I think I found was the great guitarist Chuck Wayne. And that was a pretty tough little 10 inch to come by. I was really into him last summer, and I found that. Then I got the 2 LPs, which I think is a George Wallington LP, and then I can see the Hallstein, I think it is. Good record with Charles Kennedy or something like that. I can see the cover. I can't remember the names right now. Great record, fantastic, modern, cool bop. And then I was trying to find the other 10 inches on Progressive, and boy, they're tough to find. There's a George Wallington right now. That's near the top of my want list. It's probably not the most important record I want to find, but it will complete my Progressive catalog. So there's 2 Alcone 10 inches that I kind of was looking for. I found a couple that were pretty beat up and I passed on. I've been wanting to fill that out, because I think it's important to get to know these labels as much as I can to really understand what was happening in the scene. And I have the big pieces. Sometimes the little pieces tell stories that are important. And so I was looking for those Alcone 10 inches, and I found a couple on Discogs. I was like, nah, it's not. And then I found a store, an actual brick and mortar record store, that had them both on Discogs. And I made a few offers, and whoever responded to those offers just kind of said, no, we're not interested in that. So I let it go. And about a month went by, and I decided to call the record store, because it's an actual record store. So I called and I talked to the right person and asked them about some of the condition issues and what was going on. And Indie CD and Vinyl in Indianapolis, Joe, I think his name was very helpful. He gave me a good 15-20 minutes of his time talking about what he was hearing, the sound quality. He was very honest and forthcoming with any imperfections, and talked about the guy putting his name on the records themselves, and just was very honest and willing to work with me. So I ended up getting them for a price I was very happy with, and those arrived in the mail yesterday. I've not listened to them yet, so I will have to do that at some point, but they do look like they were described. Not quite a polishing sheen, a little flatness, but they certainly look okay surface-wise. It's got, the guy's address on there, which I never really mind that kind of provenance myself. Tells you about the story. James Paschal, 2447 Sugar Grove, Indianapolis. I like it better when it says the year, but it doesn't. So this is number 3004 Progressive, which I think makes it the last of the 4 10 inches. It's got a great little lineup. You got Nick Travis on trumpet, who's a fantastic guy, kind of at the late part of the swing era, who doesn't get a lot of work as a leader in the small band era, but he shows up quite a bit as a sideman. And then I think he disappears off the scene. He might have even passed away. Nick Travis wasn't with us long, I don't think. Memory, I got so much data in there at times, it's hard to always remember the correct information. Max Roach is on the drums, Horace Silver's on the piano, Curly Russell's on the bass. So when you're talking Max Roach, Horace Silver, Curly Russell, like that's almost 55, 54 era Blue Note level playing and virtuosity. And again, you have Nick Travis, who's a white cat, with Al Cohn, who's a white cat, with Russell, Roach, and Silver, who are brothers. And so you're getting an interracial recording here at Progressive. And to be honest, and again, this is maybe going to be a little controversial for some people today, but the blackness of these labels is a large part of measuring stick of how well they're remembered and how collectible their stuff's become. You can ignore that if you want, but it's really true. The Blue Note legacy is what it is, in part because it's such an unwatered down expression of Black America, how they felt, what they were going through, what they were dealing with. There was no white compromise. Not for the audience, not for white players. They didn't really record white players. The few white artists who get into those bands were guys that came up with the brothers in Detroit or Philly. It's just a real unique Black monopoly in terms of expression of this art form. And it's made Blue Note legacies legendary. And it's really true for almost all these labels. It's the labels that had a lot of Black artists that those labels have become quite collectible and famous. And it's the Black-led records that are the ones that are being collected today. And most of the white records on Riverside, at Prestige, at Savoy, those records have slipped into obscurity. And I've said this many times, but a lot of those white artists had bigger names in the 40s and 50s coming out of Woody Herman and Stan Kenton. These guys had big popular names as soloists in those big bands, but a lot of them have just slipped into complete obscurity, and no one knows who Georgie Auld is, who's a fantastic player. But the Black guys who were actually quite obscure in those days in terms of a broader American sensibility, a lot of those guys have become very much collectible today, and those labels have become the ones people really seek after. So, a cool little progressive piece. It looks better than advertised, I'm going to say. I haven't listened to it yet. There's supposed to be some background noise. I'm okay with some snap, crackle, and pop. But what I paid for it, and here's the crazy thing. There's a $3.95 written on there in pencil. And that's how much these things have changed in the last 20 years. They wanted $50 for it. I think I paid $35. And all in all, a great little addition to my discography of the Progressive label. And then Al Cohn, this one actually comes earlier, number 3002. Again on discography, on a Progressive. These will fit nicely next to that Chuck Wayne record. I do want to get the George Wallington 10-inch when I get the chance, but like I said, I can't even find one for sale when I've been looking these last few months. So if you stumble on the George Wallington Progressive 10-inch, please let me know. This one is, I believe, quartets under the personal supervision of Gus Grant. It's Al Cohn with George Wallington, Tommy Potter, the great bass player, and then Tiny Khan, the great drummer, who's kind of another name that's a little slipped under the radar nowadays. He was a great player. Another cool kind of modern art cover. The vinyl's maybe a little bit hazier, but it's still got some shine to it. Again, I have not listened to either of these yet. They came from the same collection, and I feel like they'll happily be at home on my shelves next to each other in the Progressive discography up there for years to come, we hope and pray. So cool pieces that I'm happy to have added. Next thing I want to add is a clef piece, Norman Granz. It's the Jam Session series. I had 1 volume through 7. I had volume 9. I was just missing volume 8. There wasn't a good copy for a decent price available for a while, so I kept waiting it out. And I finally think I won this one for $10. Nice old clef trumpeter logo. It's number 711. And one of the things I find mildly annoying about this Jam Session series is that a lot of them have clef number sequence in the 600s or 700s, But a couple of them have a sequence, I think it's like 4,000 or 2,000. And it's a number sequence that doesn't seem to correlate to anything else in the clef canon, verve canon. They seem out of sequence, and I've gone on the Discogs and said, okay, maybe these were just reissued under this weird sequence later. But it seems to be how they were initially reissued. It was under that different sequence. I think it's like volume 5, 6, and 7, or 6 and 7. And it just kind of bugs me. It's like, okay, everything else is in the clef sequence. And they gave the JATP stuff its own sequence. And yet, this jam session series seems to be in various different camps. Again, a lot of the same people as the JATP here. Lionel Hampton, Illinois Jacquette, Johnny Hodges, Oscar Peterson, Dizzy Gillespie, Ray Brown, Buddy Rich, Flip Phillips, Ben Webster, and Roy Eldridge. So again, you're talking the real cream of the crop in jazz in the late 40s, early 50s, which, of course, Norman Granz, as I've said before, kind of has a monopoly on. Does it say when this was recorded? I'm going to guess this is early 50s, maybe mid 50s. But it's hard to tell. And sometimes Norman will issue stuff that was recorded years before, actually. You know, some of that JTP stuff wasn't all chronological. They would sometimes go back to early dates and issue stuff from that, even though the last JTP would say from 49-50, we're going to go back and issue some stuff from 46 on this next one. Wasn't a lot of rhyme or reason to it, doesn't seem like. Just what Norman was in the mood for and what he felt would be accessible and sell at the time. And who's to question Norman Granz? Certainly not I. But again, it was a confusing discography just in terms of its sequential reference. This is also a record I was fairly after, and it's something I kind of missed in my Sonny Rollins collection for some reason. I thought I had most of the Rollins stuff, and I think maybe because it's a split combination record here, I didn't get this one. It's a Japanese pressing of it. It's Sonny Rollins Plays on Period, which of course was the Leonard Feather label that does some really great stuff. I'm guessing this is probably a 10-inch initially with Sunny Moon, Like Someone in Love, theme from Pathetique Symphony. And then side 2 is Thad Jones Ensemble. Lust for Life, I Got It, Thad, and That Ain't Bad. Ballad medley, Flamingo, If You Were Mine. I'm Through with Love, and Love Walked In. So interesting early Rollins stuff. Again, I think it might be recorded a year or two before this release. It's 57-58. They issued it with the original Period label on this. It does have the Japanese insert. And I like Rollins at this era. If this is from 57, it puts him kind of smack in the middle of his Blue Note Riverside era. Again, being Period, knowing when all the other 10 inches were recorded, I think it's probably recorded in 54, 55, but I'm not certain. I haven't done enough research yet. But again, it comes out in 57, this version, and some of the Period stuff from that era ends up at Bethlehem, as I've said before. This one didn't, which is strange to me, because you think if you're Bethlehem, with Rollins' name coming to prominence as it was, he'd be one of the first names you'd want to reissue. But it's a mysterious world at times, the jazz universe. Now, this is a record, again, I've been searching for a long time. I've been collecting the Mode label for a long time, that West Coast LA-based cool bop label. I have most of the titles. There's a few that kind of eluded me. And now with what's coming in the mail, I have a few more pieces coming. I have pretty much all of it finally. But there's always that one that's got some collectability and value to it that prevents you from completing the series. And you kind of hold on and buying some of the titles that you know you can find for less until you get that big one. You're like, when I get that one, then I grab the other ones and finish it off. And this one's always been for $80 to $100. I could find fresh sound versions for $50, $60, which for me is just too much for the fresh sound version of something. And I don't mind fresh sound. If I have to, I'll do it. But the Mode stuff I do feel is out there, and I was just going to wait it out, try to find something I was happy with. I made a few offers on original pressings that were in the $80 to $100 range, and I would offer about 2/3 of what they were asking, and never came to any agreement with anybody. And sometimes you just have to be patient. And this is a story in perseverance. I kind of kept watching and looking for this. On Discogs, of course, you can watch for something. When it appears up, you'll get an email and notification. And of course, mostly what was showing up was those Fresh Sound era stuff and VSOP era stuff, which, I mean, it'd be fine if I had to, but it has to be a great deal. And I especially don't want to pay for $30 for a VSOP pressing plus shipping from Japan or Europe. I mean, that's a deal breaker. If I could find that VSOP record in America with $4 shipping, suddenly I'm paying $35. I'm like, okay, I can live with that. But the combination was just never right. And then I did something I don't normally do anymore. I went to Amazon. And I don't like buying used records on Amazon. You don't see photos of the actual piece. The descriptions are really not very informative. Sometimes it's difficult to even get a hold of a seller because you have to go through this process, and Amazon will redirect your. And I've actually had really bad experience with getting responses on Amazon on questions and inquiries I've had. But out of frustration and just kind of lacking the patience, I went to Amazon to look. I didn't really expect there to be an old copy there. I really didn't. And there was a bunch of new copies, actually, that were available domestically that I could have gotten for a decent price. But then I saw under the collector parentheses one collectible piece for $25. $25. And I was like, and again, they're so hard to get footing in terms of what processing is that going to be, what's the condition actually of it. And so I messaged the seller, and he actually responded very rapidly, and we came to a quick conclusion. I bought it. And the record jacket itself has a little water damage in the corner, just, wear and tear. But this is Lucienne Polk. I think it's reissued as Lucky Lucienne on VSOP, but here it's just Lucienne Polk. It's number 118, 115 in the mode sequence, of which there's about 30 titles. I got her a record on Trend, which I honestly wasn't that impressed with. The backing of it was very saccharine. And this is going to be far more of a jazzy experience here. It's got the original blue ink, which I also think is cool. It's got Marty Paich, Bob Hardaway on tenor, Dick Noel on trombone, Buddy Clark on the bass, Mel Lewis on the drums, and then Tony Rizzi on guitar. So that band alone tells you this is going to be a much jazzier effort than when I got at Trend. Recorded in 1957 in Hollywood, California. And so all that is great and all, but then the vinyl, it's pristine. It's honestly as beautiful an old copy of a mode record as I've ever seen. Beautiful, heavyweight. They use quite a thick platter. And so a record that was usually shooting up to $100, $120, I found on Amazon for $25. And you're always rolling your dice a little bit with Amazon. But the seller, again, was very responsive. And we messaged back and forth a few times. And as soon as I found out this was original mode for $25, I was willing to sell it for a VG minus. I'd be content with it. But if I was grading this, I'd put the jacket at a VG minus, maybe a good plus. But I think just that corner, everything else is pretty nice. The vinyl, though, is, I'm going to say near mint. It's like really, there's not even hairline surfaces, nothing. It's just a pretty beautiful looking piece of vinyl. So I was pretty thrilled by that result, getting that in the mail yesterday. So both the Alcone 10 inches and that piece, and the Rollins for that matter, were pieces I really kind of wanted to fill in before I went on buying Hiatus, which I'm about to embark on. And buying hiatuses for me are never fun. They're always kind of like, I lose a little bit of my direction, a little bit of my thrill in life. I love the thrill of the chase. I'm trying to track down and collect and learn. Part of my process is learning and buying and collecting. But I'm going to show you now in a bit of a quicker form the 18 records I got from Japan. We're already at 25 minutes here. This is Cole Porter in a Modern Mood by Randy Weston, the great New York piano player. And this is a record I've looked for a long time. It's initially a 10-inch LP, number 2508. And the 10-inch era LP is always over $100 for this. It's probably one of the most collectible Riverside 10 inches that there is. Their 10-inch era doesn't have the Bill Evanses and the Thelonious Monks and that era that starts in the 200 sequence for Riverside. Their 10-inch era is much more revolving around the New Orleans revival tradition and a little bit of modern jazz is sprinkled in there. So this Randy West is really one of the most desirable 10 inches on Riverside. Always tried to track down and win an original, never found one to my liking, and then I won this one at Face Records LP Japanese version, and I think I paid about $10 for it. So I'm content to have it in that format. This is a Billie Holiday session. I don't believe I have. And again, she's been reissued in so many different facets that I could be wrong. I haven't taken the time to really dig too deep yet. But it's Billie Holiday at Storyville. And my main question here, was this recorded at the Storyville Club in Boston? Yes, it was. In 1951 and 1953. You got Stan Getz on someone who was a Storyville artist. A lot of anonymous names like John Fields and Marquise Foster, Carl Drinkard, Buster Harding, Jimmy Woods on the bass on a couple of these tracks. So again, it's kind of an anonymous backing group she's got here while she's playing in Boston at the Storyville Club. It wasn't issued by Storyville in their initial LP 10-inch sequence from the early to mid-50s. There's about 24 10 inches and about 20 LPs in the initial Storyville sequence. And this was not part of that. This comes out much later, possibly and came out in Japan even. I'd never seen it until starting to look at Face on a regular basis. It's got the original Storyville logo, which is cool. So, is this issued somewhere else in America on something different? I don't know. But it's Billie Holiday. So, again, I didn't pay much for that at all. This one, I think I paid maybe $15 for it, this next one. And this is Billie Holiday at Commodore. And I have some of Billie Holiday's Commodore stuff with Teddy Wilson. I think I have the Strange Fruit section on Atlantic. But this is 3 LPs of what I would guess is all of her work at the Commodore label. Most of what's on here is in Japanese. I am sure there's English inside this box. But it's a 3 LP box of Billie Holiday at the Commodore label. Got a nice spine. These recordings will, of course, all have taken place at the Commodore music store in Manhattan. And again, they recorded Strange Fruit for Billie, and they recorded quite a bit of her, obviously. And Commodore is one of those great labels like Keynote that's doing some really great cutting-edge jazz in the 40s. Bill Gabler does a great job attracting a lot of the real black talent and putting it out there. This is another George Wallington LP that comes out on Clef, Norgran, sister labels. This is George Wallington, the workshop of the George Wallington Trio, which would put it synonymous in the era with that progressive stuff. Wallington seems to have been pretty prolific in the early 50s. He's got some prestige stuff that comes out. He just does a lot of stuff. Stuff at Savoy, stuff here at Norgran. It's quite a big body of work he's doing at the time. I'm a big fan of him. He was, of course, born in Italy, I think in Sicily, and moves to New York as a young boy. And he was called Wallington by his schoolmates because he dressed so fancy and with such flair. He was marvelous. And so he adopted the nickname Wallington, and it became his last name. I think his Italian name was like Giuseppe something. But Wallington's a great player. He was a part of the early post-bop scene. Never really a hard bop guy per se, but he was definitely a great player and part of that whole New York cosmos. Another Billie Holiday piece that I've been tracking down for a long time, and I'm going to guess I have this music in a different format, but it's got the great David Stone Martin album cover. This is from Jazz at the Philharmonic, Billie Holiday, and she was never on the JTP records, just like Ella wasn't, probably for similar reasons. Doesn't say easily to read here when these are from. But again, it's Billie Holiday with the JATP guys with the David Stone Martin cover. And this one's very expensive in America for the old Verve Clef versions. And even the Japanese ones, I've lost this in auction there a few times as it climbed into the $20, $30, $40 range. I think I won this one like for $17, which is about as much as I paid for anything in this batch of records. Take that back. I paid $23 for this. This is Johnny Hodges, the great alto saxophonist who makes a living playing with Ellington for a long time. He goes out on his own, 1950 or so, and leads some great sessions for Clef and Verve, and he's there for a long time. And even after Creed Taylor comes over to Verve and kind of cleans house, he keeps Johnny Hodges around, and Hodges is making records well into the 60s for Verve. Just a great lyrical, beautiful alto player, plays a lot of feeling, a good deal of romanticism, passion. You gotta love Johnny Hodges. Again, it's a piece that's always kind of eluded me. This is Winton Kelly in concert. Another one I'm concerned I might have a different version of this, with a different cover. But I saw it as it was ending. I'm like, I'll take a chance. Again, I think I won it for $4. And I'm a huge Winton Kelly guy. He's truly one of my favorite piano players of the 50s into the 60s. Plays with a lot of rhythm and blues. Miles Davis talked about how he could really lead the band. When Winton was on stage, no one else had to be up there directing things. Winton had everything under control. Another label that's kind of new to my horizons at this point is Vantage. They have a smallish discography that I'm going to delve into more when I start collecting again. This is the great Pinky Winters, who I have her Argo session, which is outstanding. It's always been one of my favorites ever since I found it. This is Pinky Winters with Zoot Sims, the great tenor player. I think the Japanese issued this in the 80s from the vaults of wherever they were stored. She does have an initial 10-inch at Vantage, which I want to track down, but it's not cheap. And I'll probably end up buying a Japanese version of that at some point. A record on Jubilee that I'm surprised I don't have. I think I've passed it over a few times thinking I had it. It's called The Baseyites. It's on Jubilee. It's in the middle of the Jubilee discography. I think it's like 1046 in that era somewhere. So it puts it probably like 56, 57. And you have a lot of the great Basie players here with Barry Harris, Joe Newman, Thad Jones, Billy Mitchell, Al Gray, Frank Foster, Frank West, Eddie Jones, Freddie Green, Sonny Payne. I mean, that's a who's who of Basie's band at that time. And these guys do a number of things. The Paul Kennishay records at Prestige Swingville. It wasn't uncommon for these Basie guys to show up somewhere and to play without Basie. You know, just to kind of get their own names out there. And Basie was a busy guy himself. So on Jubilee, which isn't something that Jubilee did a lot of Basie type stuff. So maybe I always kind of just ignored it, thinking it was like some kind of pop vocal ensemble, didn't pay much attention to it. The cover's a little bit saccharine for the content, I think. But when I realized what it was, I'm like, man, I need to have that. And then I couldn't find it. Like, at least not in the stores and auctions I was bidding in. It's out there. It's not that hard a record to find. But I got that for a few bucks. And I'm excited to hear that. Great band. Another record that's tough to find in America on the Warner Brothers label is The Modern Touch of Marty Paich. He has two records here on the Warner Brothers imprint. They both have rather seductive covers. The other one's A Gal in the Shower. I get a kick out of, I think it's called Marty Paich. This is the Broadway bit. It's got the gals there on the cover. If you notice, the gal on the back is reading Downbeat magazine, which is pretty cool. I'm a leg guy, so I'm a big fan of that cover, I'm not going to lie. Marty Paich is a great arranger and composer, and he's bringing a lot of that cool sound versus the cool era. He's just a real modern piano player who's definitely about the composition and the arrangement more than just the virtuosity and the blues. And so there's that dichotomy always that exists. This next one's on the Dot label, another label that I came to through Count Basie. Dots Ignites of the label with some good stuff. The Eddie Costa record's outstanding. Blue Lights. But this is Lorraine Geller. And Lorraine Geller, of course, was the wife of Herb Geller, who has some records at Jubilee and at Emersy, a great West Coast player with quite a bit of modernity and even elements of bebop and hard bop in Herb Geller. His Fire in the West record's outstanding. They do a record together at Emersy with his wife, and she's a great pianist in her own right. And here's the Dot label doing her at the piano. That looks like a shoe when you look at it in silhouette, kind of. You know, that's the edge of a grand piano. It's got a bit of a David Stone Martin look to it, although I don't think he ever did album covers for Dot. There she is. And again, the Japanese do such a great job with these records. So it's a jazz trio setting. I don't see who she's playing with off the top of my head here, but she's actually a far greater piano than I realized. You know, I mean, she's a real virtuoso. Now what we're going to move on to here is a few later labels that I'm kind of starting to delve into, and I've also had a few pieces, but I figured it's time to start adding more. I got 3 steeplechase here. Duke Jordan, who of course has some great records at Blue Note and Savoy, Signal label. This is Something Loves. Two Loves. Duke Jordan, steeplechase, probably recorded in Denmark or somewhere in Europe anyway. Then Flight to Denmark, again, probably one of the most famous steeplechase records is this Flight to Denmark. It's one you see a lot. It reminds you of the Ornette Coleman Circle in the Round covers, whatever those were called, which were also in Denmark. A nice snowy day. And Denmark's not that far, well, it's pretty far north, but the climate in Europe, I don't think Denmark has a ton of snowy days. You know, it's not like Canada where I'm from. Even though the latitudes might be similar, the ocean currents are different enough, and the continental weather in Canada makes Canada brutally cold. If you look at St. Petersburg on the map, latitudinally, it's at like 60 degrees north, St. Petersburg. And if you come across the ocean onto the North American continent, that puts you above the Canadian provinces on the border between the provinces and the territories. So you're far north in St. Petersburg. And Denmark and Scandinavia are all kind of in that same latitudinal region. But so I'm sure they get snow in Denmark at times. But aside from those 2 jazz record covers, I've not seen a lot of pictures of Denmark covered in snow. And I'm a geography guy. Most of your photos of Copenhagen show a beautiful city with a pretty temperate, moderate climate. So those are 3 steeplechases I added. And then I added 4 records at Progressive, which is the aforementioned label with the 10 inches Alcone. Again, I told you they resurfaced. This is a record I've been searching for a long time. I always kind of wanted, it's been reissued with a different cover, which I think is David Stone Martin actually. But this is the original cover, Arigato, by Hank Jones. And Hank's one of the great players of that era that's really underappreciated today. Hall of Fame player, and I don't use that term very lightly. Hank Jones is one of the true greats. Speaking of greats, Tommy Flanagan, awful album cover in my mind, but again, it's got that Progressive label with the red logo, which is what they go to later on. And then, again, a few more Progressive titles here. This is Frank West, the great bassy flautist and saxophone player, who's also a great composer and arranger. Frank West's work at Savoy is important and valuable. He also has some great work at Prestige, Frank West. So I got that for $1, I think, honestly. So I grabbed that. And then last but not least, I just had my records fall back, but they didn't go very far, thankfully. This is the Progressive Don Friedman, also on Progressive. No pun intended. And I love Don Friedman's work at Riverside. He was friends with the great Bill Evans, and they make a lot of great records. Well, a lot of similar records. Circle Waltz and some of those records he was doing at Riverside. If you like Evans' work, you'll like Friedman's work. I think he's a San Francisco native, but just a great, contemplative, spatially conscious, hints of spirituality and mysticism in his playing. I've always been a big Don Friedman fan. And I missed this one. I set it aside. I was going to show it to you. And this is the other steeplechase I got. This is Jackie McLean, Dexter Gordon, recorded in Europe, probably in Denmark. Dexter Gordon appears through courtesy of Prestige Records. And so when you have McLean with Dexter, of course, the price was right. I grabbed it. And a lot of these records, most of them were under $10. You know, a lot of them were cheaper than that. Only a few got into the teens and the 20s. And it's the shipping that gets you. But if you bundle them together, you'll end up with a nice bundle of records that you didn't pay a lot for. And then the shipping would kind of balance that out a little bit. But I still find it's a great way to collect records that are hard to find in America. You can't go wrong with Face Records. So Face, again, thank you. Indie Vinyl in Indianapolis, thank you guys. Appreciate you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed all that. Y'all stay tuned, be safe, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. If you want to support the channel, please go to my Patreon. I always appreciate the support there. You guys are always valuable to me and help me through just these difficult financial waters right now as we get in the coffee shop online. Just my demands are making it so my day job, I can't go to my brother's shop quite the same way. We'll be fine. But anyway, thank you all, you guys. Much love. Appreciate you all. Jazz is the most important art form on this planet, and it's up for us to be ambassadors for this music. And that means we shouldn't be sitting here arguing. We shouldn't be sitting here talking about the pressings and all the nonsense. We should be talking about the importance of the art. And I just can't believe how many times I see someone on the Facebook Jazz group saying, "Oh, this I don't even want to get into it. It's ridiculous." Let's talk about the music. Let's talk about what it makes you feel. You know, great stuff. Appreciate you all. Be safe. Peace.